Hey there guys, Ignite Fire here and welcome back to a brand new episode of School for Game Show where I go back to all the old Skylanders games and put all the older Skylanders into battle classes like the Senseis and Skylanders Imaginators. I have made a terrible mistake. When creating the battle class for this very character right here, I was a bit hasty in the fact that I decided to make him a ninja based on his moveset alone, in the fact that he can turn invisible and sneak upon his enemies, which is all ninja based. But that's simply one move out of the many that this guy possesses. So first of all, looking at his weaponry right here, it's staff based, so his weaponry alone is that of a sorcerer. And not to mention his design, it's kind of elusive and sorcerer based as well, with a huge cloak and the weaponry to go alongside it as such. And not to mention the mysterious headless based figure, or as such as well. So he has design implications and weaponry of a sorcerer. And not to mention, I was also mentioning in the very first School episode, in fact, that a lot of sorcerers use such staffs right here to bring down beams upon their enemies. Well, newsflash for you, this is exactly what this guy does as well. So what I'm saying here is that my apologies for putting him into a ninja class originally. I now agree with what most of the comments were pointing out, the fact that this guy should be a sorcerer instead. So, today's episode is dedicated to none other than sorcerers, in case you couldn't tell so already. So Enigma's going to go through and join up with the other sorcerers right there. But anyway, now let's be going through such characters for this episode of Schooled, mind you. So starting us off here, we have none other than Double Trouble from the very first game, Skylanders Adventure. And this guy right here is definitely a role model for what later sorcerers should be. So first of all, we have of course his staff, which can summon down beams upon his enemies, and he has all sorts of different magic spells to go alongside that, because he can summon not only magical bombs, but doubles of himself that cause for Double Trouble in his name. So above all, his ability to summon stuff and conjure spells makes him a perfect sorcerer. Then he also has weaponry of a sorcerer as well, and a moveset to go alongside it, with not only the conjuring of magic spells and everything, but the beam for his staff. In fact, that beam and the staff is a key part to his character as well, even, so that truly emphasises his sorceriness, which is why I said he's a perfect role model for the rest of these guys. But speaking of the rest of these guys, next up we have a lightning rod and a hex, also from Sprite Adventure. Now, a lightning rod I think is a sorcerer because he summons lightning, and that's basically what sorcerers are about. Sorcerers are about summoning their weaponry, and in this case, Lightning Rod's lightning is his weaponry. So yes, conjuring stuff up from thin air makes him a sorcerer indeed. And then Hex has a similar based moveset to Lightning Rod in that regard, with the fact that she summons a rain of skulls even from absolutely nowhere. And the fact that she is a witch as well can also emphasize the fact that she is a sorcerer, because witches are sorcerers, you know, they're all about conjuring magic spells as such. So not only does she have the moveset to suit the sorcerer class, but she also has the aesthetics and species name to her, being a witch and everything. And for our last Spice Adventure sorcerer, it's one that you probably wouldn't expect, and that is Cinder. Now, this form of Cinder, you could probably argue quite righteously that she is not a sorcerer, and that I would agree with, which is why I've brought in instead her Series 2 form. Now, what makes her Series 2 form more of a sorcerer than the original one is the fact that the WoW power for Series 2 Cinder allows you to summon a curse. Keyword there is summon. Sorcerer summon things, so Cinder can summon a curse right here. Not only that, but she can also summon ghosts from the underworld to do her bidding, and that's a similar trait to Double Trouble. Double Trouble summons doubles of themselves, whereas Cinder summons ghosts, mind you, so she's very much a sorcerer in my eyes. Then, as for our swapper of the group, we have Hootloop, who is very clearly a sorcerer because he has a staff and shoots beams from them. You can't get any more sorcery than that, at least when it comes to weaponry, mind you. And because of that, he wouldn't really suit any other class other than sorcerers. And then as for our Swap Force cores, we have Dunebug and Zulu. Now, Dunebug in particular has a staff just like Hootloop does, and he too fires all sorts of different beams out of it and things. Not only that, but he can also summon out thin air balls to trap his enemies in, and he can even create a little bug ally to roll those balls around for him. So if that summoning ability, and not to mention for staff on top of that, makes for a great sorcerer in Dunebug. And Zulu is a sorcerer as well, because he too has a staff, which is very intricately detailed as well. I love the fact that you can see the faces of the animals that Zulu can summon on his staff. And speaking of those animals, yes, he summons animals from thin air, which is what makes him a sorcerer, the fact that he summons those animalistic beings to do his own bidding. Those are his weaponry, you could say. So that summoning nature of his makes him a sorcerer all the more. But next up, moving on to the Trap Team course, we have Batspin, Deja Vu, and Copacadabra. Now, Copacadabra was a really difficult one to place for me, but in the end, I wound up making him a sorcerer purely for the fact that he summons snakes out of nowhere. So he just flicks up his basket and then snakes appear from who knows where. So that summoning ability of his to summon allies to his aid makes him a sorcerer in my personal opinion, and not to mention his flute. The aesthetics to it looks very similar to a staff-based thing, because, you know, as you can see from its very design, it's more intricate than any regular old flute, as you can see from the image comparison above. But then there's the other two characters, which are very obviously sorcerers, because they both have staffs, which are traditional sorcerers' weapons. And then when it comes to summoning stuff, Deja Vu not only has orbs that she can fire out of her staff, which is near enough the same as a beam, mind you, but she can also summon she can also summon black holes, even not a black hole, many black holes. But she can also manipulate time, which I find to be a sorceress based move, because time manipulation is the same as magic, and magic is very much sorcery. So the sorcery skills of Deja Vu makes her a sorcerer all the more. And then Batspin is clearly also a sorcerer as well, not only because of the staff, which I was alluding to previously, but the fact that she uses that staff to summon bats. And, you know, that similarity to Zulu emphasizes her sorcererness as well, because she summons those bats out of thin air to do her bidding for her. Those are very much her weaponry. But now we have the last character to move on to, because of course we already discussed about Enigma previously. And so basically, Blastermine is very clearly a sorcerer, not only for the fact that he has a cape, and as we've previously established, a lot of sorcerers have capes. If you look at characters like Zulu, Hootloop, kind of. I mean, like, I kind of consider his feathers a cape in a way. And then there's also, of course, well, Hex doesn't have a cape in particular, but she does have some sort of robes to her. In fact, Blastmine has both of those, both a cape and a robe, so he has the aesthetics of a sorcerer, mind you. And not only that, but he's levitating, which shows off his sorcery from the bat, because he's using magic to do such things, of course. And magic is, as I said with Deja Vu, another word for sorcery, you could say. And then not to mention, he also summons things, so like he can charge attacks to summon magic blasts, kind of like Double Trouble's bombs. So here we have someone taking inspiration from the role model right there. But yes, on top of that, he's basically just got every single piece of a skill set needed to become a sorcerer, along with the aesthetics. But that basically does it for this episode of Schooled. So I'll be seeing you guys on the next one, but until such a moment, peace.